Well, good morning everyone and welcome to destructionart.com. And today, on this rather grey and overcast day, I thought we might do some summery skies to cheer myself up. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do two types of sky. I'm going to do a one colour sky with some clouds in it, and then a two colour sky again with some clouds. It's all really very simple stuff, but it's quite effective when you do it. And to do the tutorial today, what you're going to need is some paper. You're going to need some paints. I'm just using my standard Cotman paints, which I use, Winsor & Newton. So I've got three different colours here. Sorry, the camera's a bit all over the place today. The three colours that I've got for the one colour sky, I'm going to use the ultramarine blue, which is this one here. And for the two colour sky, very simple, I'm going to use some cerulean blue and some cobalt blue, and that's all you'll need really for the skies for today. And I hope you get a chance to practice them at some point to let me know how you get on. So the other things that I'm going to be using today are my brushes. So I'm only really going to be using two quite big brushes. I've got this brush here, which is a pointed brush, quite a big one. In the series that I use, it's a number 3, but I'm not sure what you'd use. And I've got a 1.5-inch relatively flat brush there, which is good for applying large expanses of water onto my Bockingford £140 I think it's not paper for today. And plenty of clean water, most importantly, courtesy of my daughter, who doesn't know that I've borrowed her jar for this session. Right, so what I'm going to start with first of all is with the one colour painted sky. I'm going to use the ultramarine blue, and the first thing that you need to do is to wet your brush, and just with the water I'm going to apply it to the surface, and I'm going to get it nice and wet so you get quite a glossy look onto the paper. I put a small, a very faint horizon line, which you probably can't see there, but you know, that's just in case at a later date you're going to put some land in or some sea if you want to do that. And I can reuse this paper and make a pretty scene on it at some point, hopefully. Okay. I find it quite difficult to see where you've put the water sometimes, depending on the lighting in your room. Especially when you've got natural light as well. I often have to tilt the board like this to see where the sheen is from the glossy watered surface. What you can do is quite helpful as well, is to, and I'll probably do it on this now just to show you, is I'm going to put a tiny bit of the ultramarine into my palette, and I'm just going to apply it across, and you can see then possibly where the paint is starting to go on. And my eyes are getting terrible these days, so it's quite useful to be able to see where the paint is going onto the, sorry, where the water's going onto the paper. Okay, so I've got that nice and wet now. I think some of the times when you do this, it's a little bit hit and miss as to how wet you get the paper. If you get it too wet, then what tends to happen is that the pigment just seems to stay on the surface and doesn't really do very much at all and floats. And if you get it too dry, then really the paint doesn't move at all on the paper, and it just stays where you put it on the brush, and that's not what you want. You want something which is going to flow. The whole point of watercolour is about the movement of the paint around the water surface. So here we go. So I think that's probably about right now. I'm just going to go in to my colours, so I'll just show you that. I'm going in here, put a bit more water into my palette, add in my French ultramarine. Oh, it's a cracking colour that, isn't it? So there we go. So I've kind of got a slightly watery wash, and there's some little thicker bits in there where I picked up too much paint, but that's okay. And you can see on my brush there's a little blobs of paint. It's not too bad, that, because what that'll do is just vary the amount of colour that goes onto the onto the paper. So starting across the top, just working it through with my big brush. And what you're looking to do is get some kind of interesting shapes onto your paper. And as I come towards the horizon line, I'm going to make it thinner, the paint. Okay, because usually towards the horizon it gets a lot lighter. If there's a little bobble in your watercolour paper, don't worry too much. That helps sometimes. One of those happy accidents. Here we go. Right. So at this stage, you've got something that looks a little bit of a mess, really. And there's lots of different things you can do. At this stage, if you want to, you can move the board around. And because you've got the right amount of paint and water, it will start to move the pigment across the page. And you can see it's starting to move down. And this starts to form areas that begin to look a little bit like clouds. But we can actually improve that process by using some toilet roll. If you can, try to get the stuff that isn't printed, because quite often the last thing you really need is to have pretty teddy bears all over your work. So I'm going to use something that my art teacher calls the rolling technique. So you just get a piece of paper like this, scrumple it all up, there you go, like this, into a kind of roll. You can use a bit more than that as well if you want to, and then what you can do is apply it to the paper and then roll it across. Rock and roll. That's where I'm coming from. And you can do it again. Try to use clean paper if you can. You might end up using quite a lot of paper. And then what you can do as well is you can begin to shape the clouds. So we've got some very basic shapes in there, but I'm using now some more tightly folded bits of paper, a little bit like that. And I'm using those almost to blot out the colour. So the bits that you blot, you can press quite firmly if you need to. Again, try not to use blotted bits of colour back onto the cloud. Keep your toilet roll moving around. Because what will happen is that if you picked up some blue and then you just press it back into what's going to be a cloud, you put the blue back into the cloud, so just a waste. And also sometimes it makes it more difficult to achieve the clean white clouds that you might be after. So again, using more toilet paper. I get mine from Iceland, just in case you're interested. My toilet paper, that's really cheap. 24 rolls for £6.79 it was the other day. Wow. I haven't got a contract with Iceland or anything, just thought I'd point that out. But they were doing some bargain Pepsi Max too. 24 cans for about £4. If you like a rum and coke like me, you know, Captain Morgan's, if you're listening out there, yeah, I like a rum and coke. So now you can see that what was a bit of a blobby mess is actually beginning to turn into something which is quite a nice cloud scene and sky scene. And we've got some variations in the blue, and up here you've got some lighter bits with some misty type clouds, harder edge clouds here, some deeper ultramarine blue here, and then a nice line of diagonal cloud going across, and it's fading downwards. So at this point what you can do is you can move the paper again, so you can kind of hold the board at an angle, and sometimes people prop the boards up to achieve this effect as well, and just, you know, pop a toilet roll underneath it or a rubber, and that will increase the movement of the paint and create some hard edges and also some graded paint, so that you get like a smooth transition or a hard edge where the water collects. But that's looking alright at the moment. And what you can do as well, which I find quite useful, is taking your pointing brush, again using clean water, and dry off the excess paint onto your toilet roll. So and then what you might want to do is you might want to just pick out some areas that you might want to smooth out, keeping the brush nice and clean, drying it off. Where you might want to take away a hard edge and make it look smoother. And again, you can dab it and work it if you want to. There's not really a lot wrong with this cloud today. Sometimes they go completely wrong, and you just can't get the effect. And oh, that's nice because it brought out a bit of the white, a bit more white there by doing that. I'll try that somewhere else as well, maybe over here. So I'll just wetten the paper again. Then dabbing that through. Yeah, I've done it again, that's lovely. So that's worked really nice up there. I might try that up in this corner as well. There we go. I've got a bit of a walk board, that's why it's making that horrible noise on my table. Sometimes you might be tempted to think, God, that looks a bit odd. There's a little tiny bit there which looks like quite pointy. Can you see that? But do you know what? When you look at clouds, they have those bits on them. They're not all smooth and fluffy. It's not all candy floss, is it? So yeah, I was looking at the sky last night when I was driving home from picking my daughter up from a party, and I thought, if you painted what I'd seen last night, it would have looked really false. But the sky is so infinite in its possibilities that, you know, you need to account for that in your painting as well. And I quite like that. I think that's working really well. So that's quite simply the one colour method for doing the sky. Well, that's what I call it anyway. And it's pretty effective, and it gives a beautiful kind of summer bright noon sky. So that's that one done. I'll be back in a mo. I'll just get a different board, and we'll have a go at the two colour sky